Bloody Jacob here to give you my thoughts on The Punisher One Last Kill, which of course is on Disney Plus as a special presentation, similar to Werewolf by Night and Guardians of the Galaxy, the Christmas special, and different things like that they've been doing periodically over the last few years. And of course, it gives us a bit of time spent with Jon Bernthal's Frank Castle after having previously seen him in the first season of Born Again. And I don't want to make this an overly long video, but to preface a little bit, I am a major fan of The Punisher. I have been for pretty much my entire life, in terms of both movies, comics, even the PS2 video game back in the 2000s. He's a character that's meant a lot to me, a great deal actually. And Jon Bernthal's been an actor I've loved for a long time. For me, it's like a toss-up between, him and Thomas Jane in terms of, portrayals and everything. And I like, pieces of what Ray Stevenson got to do and, even Dolph Lundgren's in the 80s, for, the vehicle that was. So my heart is coming from the right place, but I just wanted to address at least a little bit just some of the odd discourse that has been around it. It seems like, at least on a certain weird little branch on the internet over the past while, going around its release. A lot of people are, complaining and, doing that weird gatekeeping thing. Oh, Jon Bernthal's Frank isn't, the real Punisher. He's not even, Frank Castle. He's just, some, generic revenge tough guy, whatever. Because he doesn't, because they're not adapting this, one-to-one version of the comics. Oh, Frank wouldn't really act like this. This is exactly how Frank would act, not like that. Just really little nitpicky shit, And I'm not saying you can't expect, or you're not allowed to want like a, really like accurate version or something like that. But again, as someone who's been a fan of the Punisher pretty much my entire life, the success of this version of the Punisher, it does not ride fully on every aspect mimicking, the comics, 24/7, okay? And again, speaking as someone who's always loved the Punisher, even when it's not, just following along to something specifically from the comics in terms of behavior or storyline, I can wholeheartedly say that I definitely think Bernthal's version has respected the character and continues to respect the character. And I don't know, I get being anal about stuff like that, but then people just take it to such insane, like weirdly personal levels. Oh, Jon Bernthal supports the police, so he's a piece of shit. Frank would be a lot more, thoughtful than that, or he hates cops or what, which he doesn't. Frank Castle hates corrupt pieces of shit, Bernthal supports the rare good cops that are still out there, which do exist, believe it or not. And Bernthal's also covered, corruption, and he's portrayed, Frank addressing corruption very much so. Even with as recently as that Born Again season, without going into it for those who haven't seen it. So I really don't know what more you could ask for, Frank. Jon Bernthal's always been like a really, genuinely good human being to his fans, and again, he has a really very balanced take on, issues like that if you want to go into it. So just because he supports the good that's out there doesn't mean he, doesn't understand the bad either. He obviously does. And he's done that in illustrating what he's wanted to portray as Frank too. From pushing for certain scenes in Born Again that involved addressing things very much like people misusing his symbol, to co-writing it right here, which is, really cool of him. That shows that he actually likes to have his hands in the character and he actually cares beyond it just being a job. But yeah, so to get all that crap out of the way, I'm tired of engaging with it on Twitter and stuff like that. It's hard to avoid sometimes though. But I just want to get that out of the way a bit. But I really enjoyed the special overall. It's about 45-ish minutes, and of course I just want more. I want more. I want this to be another series for Bernthal's Frank. We're seeing him in Born Again, Brand New Day, Spider-Man coming up. Which will be fun because even Frank in the comics has bounced from different characters, series, so it's not like a unheard of thing. I think that'll be fun for what it is. See him and Tom Holland, um, and I'm assuming he'll just reappear in Born Again at some point. But I really think the character is more than worthy to keep carrying on something on his own. And I enjoyed this here. And something else I'll address real quick is something I get is people are getting some people again, it's just like this particular branch of the internet are a bit tired of kind of like the stopping and going per se with Bernthal's Frank. Why is he always having to like restart? Why isn't he just like in Punisher mode? That should be like his straight through line right now. That's just what he is at this point. To a point, I agree. Part of me wants like just that straightforward Punisher taking down a syndicate story without having to like kind of readdress where his head's at. And I don't know. I get it, but at the same time, I've always seen this version of the Punisher as to an extent anyway, how a guy like this would actually have to function in the real world. Not only does he have PTSD from his time in war, not only does he have PTSD from how he lost his family, he has that brain injury as well, on top of all his other mental shit. Okay, and someone like that in the real world will not be a clean straight line in terms of how he functions day to day, let alone year to year or years later, what have you. It will be messy, this guy's headspace. It will be inconsistent to a point. Some days he'll, have this, mission, this objective in mind, depending on where his headspace is. And other days he'll be just, just buried in everything that he's been through and the weight of it. And he never fully gets over it. He said as far back as, the first season of the initial Punisher show. Every morning he wakes up and he still looks for me. He's on like this cycle. He can't get out of his own head. That's not something he's ever going to be able to do. He's not ever going to be able to just like straight focus on, killing pieces of shit, which he will do. But, I think it fits with, portraying him in a in-depth way that this is how this guy would operate. And I also think this special was, an attempt to work as a way to kind of introduce him for people that have been following him, people that might just hop on Disney Plus and want to check him out. So it's like a really easy, like, contained thing to a point too. And the first half you get in Frank's headspace. Sometimes Bernthal really goes crazy with some of the delivery, but he puts so much damn raw effort into his acting. His performance is just fucking fantastic here. I enjoyed the little appearances we had, from different visions in his head too. And like this big apartment complex with Monucci, Judith Light, that family being connected to Frank years ago too. I hope they follow up with that more too. And with the complex, it gave me that dash of like a bit of like a Death Wish 3 flavor. Being a big Bronson fan as well, I appreciate that, just the setting of that. Really nicely delivered choreography. Sure, there's that stone everyone's talking about, but they had just put that stone's face onto Bernthal's body, and it's not the best shot thing in the world, but I think the internet tends to overblow any little thing they can. It wasn't bad at all. And just really slick, nicely done throughout. Violent as hell, and he again have Castle making the choice of just straight. Just go, point of just like going after her, or maybe seeing someone else about to lose what he's lost, and that was a pretty poignant moment as well. But yeah, I really liked it overall. I won't say it's like Bernthal's like best of the Punisher, but it's really great to have. I really just hope leads to more and more for him, a show, more appearances in Born Again, etc. He should play him as long as he wants to for the rest of his career. But it can count as a short film too, so it's obviously one of my favorite films of 2026 as well. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, obviously, Instagram, later.